So, hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to today's workshop of the topic game design, and especially what game design has to do with writing. Because as a writer, okay, you write the book. Of course, as a game designer, you also write stuff, but where is the connection? And that is the focus today. So really to get the idea, hey, how could you use something you know from writing in game design? And if you're coming more from the game design part, how can you use something we know from writing, like special techniques, special approach to writing? How can we use that for better game design? And the overall goal, or through the course of the next hour, I will look at a project I'm currently doing that involves both writing and game design, and where I see, okay, those are not two separate things, and those are very much interwoven. So that's for today. So if you have any questions, just write them in the live chat or below in the comments, or if it's too loud or too if you can't hear the sound, so just let me know. Okay, so quick question is, what do these things have to do? Especially if you're a writer, if you have subscribed for a longer time to my channel. I mostly talked about project management. I talked about, okay, how can you start a story? How can you design a non-fiction book? Or can you design a fiction book? How can you do that technology? But game design feels like that is something completely different. So really for today, the takeaways would be, okay, what can you learn as a writer from game design, and vice versa, what can you learn as a game designer from writing? Looking back at what we discussed last time, that was, that was design thinking. We discussed how you could use design thinking. Oh, well, that was two workshops ago. Last time we did the hero's journey, and 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago we did design thinking. And we will look today at both design thinking today again, and also at the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell. You might be familiar, or well, it should be, you should be familiar with it if you're a writer. Okay, so what? Just a quick look at what is design thinking. Design thinking is basically saying, okay, don't just have an idea, write your story, and then have someone read it and then change your whole book, or just say, well, I've already written for 2 months, so I won't make any changes. So to prevent this situation where you get your feedback too late, the idea of design thinking is really to get more into the shoes of your potential reader, of your potential player, if it's a game. So, and that is here especially the emphasis part, where you really have to think, okay, what is your player actually, or your reader actually, what do they want, what problems do they have, and really seeing it from their point of view. This also involves a lot of research, meaning if you want to write about a topic, then first investigate, read about it, what have other authors written about it, and also look at reviews from other players, from other readers. What do they think about it? And most importantly, maybe join a readers club or a game players club, a board game club. Usually there is one in your local area, and have them and just play with them, talk with them, to really get a feeling, okay, what's currently hot on the market. Because we all want to write for a particular market, and we want to write basically what the reader or player wants to read or play with. And I mean, sure, if you don't have much experience in that regard with writing, or if you're first-time writer, first-time author, first-time game designer, you might think, well, I have this great idea and I really want that idea I wanted manifested. But the thing is, just with stories, probably 1,000 other people already had something similar. So that's the one point. The other point is there are certain mechanics that are simply part or should be part of your toolkit. That's really because in the end, what you want to achieve, both as a game designer as well as an author, you want to take your audience with you and to a journey and for them to experience a certain emotional moment or increase of suspense, and really take your audience with you. And if you look at again, this should be something you already know, but I just put it here. Here is from Star Wars, Luke Skywalker, because Star Wars is often cited as one of the movies or series of movies where this hero's journey is really done really to the max, because it really follows the idea of the hero. So I think that can I'll check if I can get a better picture. One moment. One moment here. Yeah, I'll share it. This one. So, okay, to move it a little bit. So. Okay, so this is the hero's journey. The idea of the hero's journey is really your reader, your player, anyone you're in contact with starts like at nothing. Like, okay, they're new to whatever world you're describing. They are new to this world. So starting with a character that is also new to the world and where you can relate to really helps you to get a connection to the reader. And this way you take really the reader or player in your hands and take them through the whole journey, through the whole book, or through the whole game. So, and the approach I will be discussing today is how you can use this also for example, for rule books or even for non-fiction books, because again, the reader is also going through a hero's journey, someone who is faced with this topic or this type of story, this type of world the first time. So having someone really starting out here at the top, you can imagine from Star Wars, Luke Skywalker, you follow him through a typical day. He gets some scrapped robots and repairs them, and that's his typical day on the desert planet. So this is basically a typical work day, and you can relate to it. Sure, it's science fiction, something like that, but you really have a connection to Luke Skywalker here. And then something happens, some special event, something that is out of the ordinary. So I hope I'm not spoiling the video for you, or the movie for you, but he finds a robot with a hidden message. So he can't really decipher it, but he has a hidden message, and then finds his aide, his mentor. That's either in the beginning Obi-Wan Kenobi, or later than Yoda. And he finds his mentor, and then there's a threshold where he says, should I or shouldn't I? Okay, well, I won't discuss a full hour of the hero's journey. There are many resources on this topic just to get you on part of it. But what does this help us with the design thinking? Right, I'll just switch back. What does this help us with the design thinking? So if we want to write a book, or if we want to create a game, we also should look at our user and imagine, okay, should we have invested thousands of hours or hundreds of hours into this story, into game mechanics and this and this and that, but our player or our reader really starts at nothing. They don't have really a connection to that. I mean, one trick to get around with it, especially with novels, is to say, okay, there are special mechanics going on in a novel where you say, this is a fantasy novel with werewolves and a romance story. So people already know, looking at the cover, they know, okay, that's what it's about. It meets my expectations. I read it, and it has a certain structure, the story. And at the end of the book, the book really met my expectations, and that's a success. And what's actually happening here as a writer, you're taking a certain mechanic that is known to the reader, so you're meeting the reader's expectations, and also with the theme, you're taking a certain theme, a certain world, certain concepts. World functions a certain way, like werewolves go out at night when there's a full moon, and you're already connecting to the reader that way. And the same we also need to apply to games, because a game is basically a mechanic and a story combined. And so the first step, like with writing, is to learn these mechanics. With stories, we have, as I said, we have this, that's one possibility, but we have, for example, the hero's journey, or we have like ideas like building a suspense and then like falling back and then getting back again. The hero heals or gets help and then goes into the final fight. Also, you have those structures of a different kind of movies, and they all follow a certain structure. And I mean, that is one structure. And the same game mechanics you can also, or the same mechanics you find also with games. Because with games, you also, as a player, you go through a journey, you learn the rules, you play with the other players. It goes, the suspense increases towards the end of the game. It's unclear who will win. You still see a chance to catch up to the top player, and you're playing through different kind of mechanics and following also a type of story. So, and knowing this, when you want to design a game, you can simply, or you could simply start out saying, okay, sure, it's a game with cards, with dice, and here you throw and there you throw. But maybe instead of like focusing really on the mechanics, think about on the core game mechanics. Think about, okay, what type of journey do you want the player go through? Like in the beginning, you want the player, okay, to learn the rules. How hard do you want to make it for the player? Imagine you have a thick rule book, and first you have to explain the rules for a full hour. That's like having a separate book for your book, and the first book explains the world, and before you even know the world, you can't start reading the book. That doesn't work. So while writing a book, you really start at zero, and the same should also apply to games. You should, I mean, maybe 40 years or 50 years ago with those simulation games, you sit with your friends a full day and you make up rules yourself and you play with them, etc. But people no longer have that much time. So if you really want to design a 1 hour game or a 2 hour game, you can't have them sitting 1 or 2 hours learning the rules. So designing those rules, designing the game is in that regard really similar to writing a novel, because you have to start with, well, nothing, and you have to take them by the hand and really have to encourage them to get into the game. Sure, I mean, there are many games that do it a little bit differently, where there is a wise guy, someone who already played the game and knows the rules and guides you along, so you have like another player taking that part. But really, to have an even better game, to have a game that is even more receptive to more players, your focus should be, okay, including explaining the rules, playing the game, ending the game. That all should be part of a story. So someone should be able to, after the game, should be able to recall that story and tell, maybe write a book or write a short story and tell your game how it went, what happened, and go along. Okay, so it's talked a lot about motivation and why it even makes sense and why it might help you. Now I would like to really look at, okay, we talked about this and this and that. How would it look like specifically if you want to learn how to design a game? What specific steps would we go through? And for that, I have prepared a Mila note. I already showed this previously. This is basically it's basically a whiteboard, and on this whiteboard you can, I mean there are many softwares like that, but you can collaboratively with others, or you alone can sort or order your thoughts, what is even about. So I'm currently doing this with mine, and I started out, well, I started actually out with a few ideas where I say, okay, it might be cool if this and that. So you need some sort of initial idea. It's the same for stories, of course. You need some sort of idea, but this is just a placeholder, and this is basically just your initial starting point. Because what you need to do, just like with novels, you need to explore what mechanics are there, even what mechanics are popular currently, what other games are popular, what theme do people currently like. It might be a simulation game, war game, fantasy game, management game, worker placement game, etc. etc. So there are many different themes going on, and you have to, after having your initial idea, you have to research what's currently on the market. Because sure, I mean, it's your idea, you want to have that realized, but just like with a story, it would be really nice if other people also play or read your story or play your game. So in that regard, it is helpful. Yes, it's helpful to have an initial idea, so like giving your first direction where you search in this search space of the market, of ideas, what other people have done. So that's your initial step, but then really follow it up with doing real research. And so the first step is really having an initial idea. For example, I'm currently doing one that follows like this. Okay, I have a background in project management, so wait, I'll zoom a little bit in. Can I zoom here? Yeah. I have a background in project management, so I am kind of know my way around, so that would be cool. And I like cyberpunk. I like that, and I like science fiction, and I don't like aliens. It's just my personal preference, and I really like really getting things right in project management because it's my personal preference, and that's plays in the near future. So that is just my start, and the same way you would also approach a new book. And with that initial idea, I would say, okay, let's just look at what other people say. Your first approach could be, as I said in the beginning, join a local club, join a board game club, join a reading club, and see just, okay, what's currently popular, would people like that, maybe present your initial idea, get some initial feedback, simply to connect to a maybe more knowledgeable audience that maybe already know, okay, that's a really bad idea, or that was already done last year and nobody liked that book or nobody liked that idea. So you would save already a lot of work if at this point you say, okay, sure, I had this cool idea, but maybe I'll have another idea. So you just throw it away. So So talking to other people and getting their input. Also, there are I got here on the other page. There are, especially for games, and of course also for books. I mean, for books, you would just go to Amazon and either just purchase all the recent books in your theme, in your target, for your target audience, and read those. But also you could simply compile all those reviews at the bottom. And maybe not those that always say, it's a great book, I like it, or it's a great game, we had fun, etc. Well, those are fine, but especially maybe focus on those where they say, I like this part, but I didn't like that other mechanic, or I didn't like the theme, or didn't like that. And this can actually be a lot of work. So if you never have done that in a certain particular subject, for a certain particular subject of a certain particular topic, this might actually not just like an afternoon where you say, okay, just scroll down a little bit and then see it, but it might actually be weeks or months of work to really get familiar with the topic you're writing about. And you can't just say, well, I read 3 books and I have another idea. You really have to know the market. For example, for my current game, I started... There's a website, there are many websites like that, but there's one website called Board Game Quest, but there are others. I mean, that's just one example. And they just, I think since for about 10 years now, they wrote a lot of reviews. So you have a lot of reviews that's just ranked by rating, but you can also sort it by type of game. So if it's a board game, a card game, a trade card game, it's a dice game or so, you can sort it. And as cumbersome as it sounds, maybe just work your way through hundreds of entries here and read what's it about. For example, this one. Of course, they have a lot of text or so, but you also get a feeling for, okay, how do they currently design cards? How does their mechanic work? What theme are they doing? But especially, of course, this one is important. Okay, what were the good parts? For example, here, the turns were very fast. So you write down for yourself, maybe that's a good point. Maybe I should look while I'm designing the game, or I'm designing the mechanic. Okay, I want very fast turns. Or here, misses. Okay, there's luck. Do I want players that like a game of luck, where they want that suspense of not knowing, will it go this way or will it go that way, and what mechanic do I want for that? And here they say, unmitigable luck, that means luck where the player can't do anything about it. So it's like having a simple dice game. Okay, let's throw a dice, and if your result is higher than mine, then you won, and if mine is higher than I won. I mean, that's a game of luck where the players don't really have any influence on the result, and that puts the player out of the commanding seat, where you say, okay, the player is just watching the game basically, and the player is just about feeling then the rush of excitement when he or she wins. But I mean, if that is your goal with your book or your game, then go for it. But in this type of game, people or the target audience want more a strategic result. They want to have an influence on the outcome. And usually the target audience of games are people who say, I want not just read a story, read the rule book, read the backstory, but have an influence on the outcome. I feel to be in charge. Maybe I want to beat other people, or I want to cooperate with other people to really reach the goal. And here we already, just by looking at one of the things, you already find, okay, hey, actually, sure, I have that idea for a book, for for a game, but maybe I should also think about, okay, who am I actually writing this book or game for? What people are there? So we will get that in a brief moment. This will be the next point I will go to. So who will be your target audience? But this aside, you can go through all those reviews, and I don't know, just a random one. Scroll down, either read everything, look at the pictures, but really the important point is here. Okay, some ideas, and you can basically take all those ideas here, write them down, and then really think about what will apply to your game and what won't apply to your game. And this is basically research of thousands of hours of game time other players have already played and thought about what would work, what wouldn't work. Same goes with movies, same goes with books, where you also have thousands or millions of hours of people writing reviews and thinking about what could have been better, or this plot event wasn't good, or it was too much suspense, or I wasn't happy that the plot wasn't resolved at the end, that was a cliffhanger. So you really have to think, okay, there are those different preferences, different criticisms, and there are also different people with different preferences. And it really becomes already very complex to think about, okay, sure, I had this idea for that game, but now I have to think about, okay, I can't create a game that will make everyone happy. So really I have to think what type of game or what type of audience do you want to create, and that really becomes challenging. And coming back to the hero's journey again, and the hero's journey in that regard would be just one more tool, one more game mechanic where you say, okay, my goal is to have players that are new to the game, and I want to have them in the game in 5 minutes. So you create a game that gets the player here on a hero's journey, where you have that simple explanation at the beginning, what is the game about, and then go on and explain it, and more the player learns it until a certain point where the player is fully versed in the rules and then can play on his or her own. So that would be just a tool. So you already see, okay, it goes in all different directions. So we should go back to our design document and think about how we can continue. So we already started here with an initial idea, and that initial idea led us to learning basically more about the theme, the setting, and how even to do game design. And all our knowledge where we said, okay, we found out this or that about other games, we could write down here just a few examples. I copy them right here in. For example, I just copy a few in. We could call that what are typical criticisms of game mechanics. And of course, if you're writing a book, same would be, okay, maybe write a list of what are typical criticisms of books, of plots, etc. Of course, there are significantly more books than games, but the basic ideas is the same in terms of learning. For example, here, reward the leader, snowball, the rich get richer mechanisms. That's usually in some early games, for example, Monopoly, where someone who has a little bit of luck in the beginning and then invested in houses and hotels, and then get more money and then can buy more and then have even more money, and then you have a runaway effect. And people usually say, that's probably not what I want. Maybe for some games it is interesting, but for some it isn't. Same goes, of course, with stories. Do you want to have a runaway effect in a story? Probably not. Where you say, okay, you start out the movie with, I don't know, two competing businessmen, and they both have a different idea how to go forward. And the one businessman uses a different strategy, and he gets less money, and she, on the other hand, has initially some luck, and she invests more. Where's the interesting story if you're just looking at two people racing at different speeds and nothing really happens except one gets faster and faster and leaves the other person behind? There's no real conflict there because they never really compete at the same level. And I mean, that's pretty obvious for stories, but of course, because a game is basically a story generator, because you have maybe thousands of different stories you could create with a game, you have to think about this already in the game mechanics. So it's like writing a meta version of a book where you not write a story, but write a story generator. And that is what we should look at games as. Games are story generators, and you not only have to think about a single story, because if you really push all the players into a single line where they can't really do anything, then it's just a story, and you miss the target audience that really wants to be in the seat and really explores those different ways to go forward. So if you have just like a line and a dice, and you just move forward with your dice, or you have a dice mechanic, then there are not many stories to tell about that. Like, okay, maybe one story, someone threw 10 times a 6 and then won the game. Maybe that is a story then that could be told, but that's about it. So really, think of games as story creators, and that's really the connection between those between game design and stories and writing novels. So for just exemplary, I mean, there are dozens and dozens and dozens. There are other mechanics. I can also I will put a link there about good videos about game mechanics. Here, for example, the opposite, gang up on leader mechanisms, where you say, okay, oh, that player has 10 points and we have only 5 points, and he will win the game, so we will gang up and cause damage to that player so that he will stay back. That is, of course, also, well, it might make it more interesting. That is a kind of catch-up mechanic, so it kind of mitigates the first mechanic. But here the second mechanic is really like punishing the leading player. So it's no fun for the leading player, of course, and it's because you're not only writing for someone watching the game, but you're also, I mean, writing the game design, writing the game rules, writing the story. You're not just writing for people watching the game, you're also writing for, of course, people playing the game. And having to punish someone who is good at the game is always a little bit dicey. A simple alternative would be to rewarding all players or rewarding the other players. So that's a positive one. The player up front keeps their points and they're still ahead, but the other players can catch up. Then player elimination, it's of course always a little bit problematic if you want to play the game but you're eliminated, so you have to watch the game. And well, again, lack of catch-up mechanism, we just had that. Or this is also interesting, if you have a hard time, if you're playing the game the first time and because of the game mechanics someone more experienced can't help someone else because the cards have to be hidden or a certain game mechanic blocks that. Another thing is if there's no tutorial, no introduction, and that was what I said in the beginning about the hero's journey, that you take the new player by your hand and be the herald, be the wise guy that introduces the player. So your game people should be able to play your game by learning the game rules incrementally and not like start in round one with 1,000 different possibilities that will have repercussions 10 turns in the future. I mean, sure, it has there's always a factor in it, but it makes more fun for new players if they are slowly introduced into the rules. Just like with a story, I mean, there are different types of stories. Some stories just throw the reader into the action. I mean, that is also possible, but even within that action, the player already has an idea how the world works. So it's a little bit more challenging. More frequent are stories where you really start out with the character. There are the stories about where he or she is introduced in their daily life. Then something happens, just like here in the hero's journey. So ordinary world, we see Luke Skywalker working. We see a call to adventure. He finds a robot. Refusal of the call. He's reluctant to do anything about it. Then he meets the mentor and gets to know the story or his call to rescue the princess. Then his parents are killed, and here he's crossing the threshold and goes on an adventure. And then there are tests with meeting new allies, meeting new enemies. Approach the inmost cave where he's learning the Force. Then, he fights Darth Vader, or the Imperium, and then it gives a road back. And then there's a resurrection. There's another final fight, and then there's a return, and it's here called the return with the elixir, or the return of the solution. So the emperor was killed, and he is now on another journey, maybe to be the wise person, the Yoda person than himself. So as you see, okay, we as a third person, as a watcher of the movie, we are introduced into the world slowly, the daily work, then a call to adventure, meeting with the mentor, more explanation, and we learn more and more about the world until we know as much so that we can understand the world and really get into a position where we can really understand the inner workings also of the character, why he's doing this, why he's doing that, and not everything has to be explained or put to the open. So maybe we see the character hesitating, and because we already know the world, we know why the character is hesitating. So that is of course the goal, what we want to reach as a writer. And same with game design. Of course, we want to reach a point where we have explained the rules far enough that the player starts to think. Of course, it depends on the game. I mean, there are games where you say, okay, put my card on the head and guess what's on the card. I mean, it's a totally different type of game. I'm maybe more talking about games where you develop a character, or where you make progress during the game and not just like getting tokens or getting money. Okay, so back to our design. So we write down all our research, what we find out about game mechanisms. Same with literature, what literature devices are there, and what else do? We do market research. So what is currently on the market? For example, there we go. Here. For example, there is Google Ngram, right? And Google Trends. that is one way. I mean, there are different. There are also one after the other. There's Google Trends, where you can simply check the popularity of a certain search word. For example, cyberpunk. It is something, well, that wasn't really popular the last 20 years, but it recently, with the release of the game, here it was announced 2013, with the computer game, there was a huge spike and of course a lot of discussions in that regard. And you can of course search for other topics like, wait, what did I write down? For example, I searched for board games. So what about board games? Let's remove this one. So board games, we don't see much. Okay, that's worldwide. So we don't see much, but we see, of course, for example, okay, where's this popular? Of course, it's English, so you have a lot of more English results here. There's also Ngram that goes a little bit further back. Ngram. For example, for example, Ngram is about the mentioning of the word in books, which is interesting. So basically also what people talk about, but in a more sophisticated form. Like you don't write a book every day, so it's a more sophisticated form. So you really see here an significant increase since the 80s in terms of card game, or same with board games. Here since the 1960s or so. So it's not like we have a lot of board games like 200 years ago, really. We had some books, like some games like with snakes and ladders or something like that. But it really started like around 1960. And then, of course, there is interesting information if you want to go for a particular theme or a particular or simply check out your competition. For example, what do I have here? For example, there's a game mechanic called deck building, where you basically build your hand, and that is significantly increasing, I think, because of Magic the Gathering. Of course, you have to be a little bit careful not to get a search term like deck building, like your deck of your house. Same with, for example, okay, another one would be project management. That would be a theme of my current game. Okay, how it's going on. Okay, so people are taking a lot of interest since the 1960, but around 2009 or so, people lose interest. And of course, you have to know why. Why are people no longer using that? So you can use different tools to find out more in the market. There are also tools like that for Amazon if you want to write. So that's often a huge point. There are tools where they basically track the rank of different genres of different books and see, okay, what type of genre or what type of subgenre is currently popular. And writing for that genre ultimately brings you more money, because there are thousands of different genres. And if you see, okay, there's could be a rising interest in that for whatever reason, you can jump on that bandwagon and basically release also a book in that field. Again, that is purely business advice, and sure, you probably want to write a book because you want to express yourself, but of course it's always better to write for an audience because you get better feedback, you get more sales, and you maybe can finance your next book. So that is something. Okay, so that is market research. Just have to go back, and you can also add that as a separate note, and just write down. For example, I wrote down here search results just a sample here the links where what information did I use and what information did I use from the different or what I found on the different platforms. Okay, so next one, what is, what I mentioned before, very important, the who you are writing for, who you are designing your game for. And that will be probably a separate topic also for next time, so I will just briefly mention it. Because I already mentioned people use different media for different reasons. There is, for example, a recent study, which I will also maybe mention next time more, that links your personality type with your music preference. And same goes a preference for certain types of books that have maybe more suspense, less suspense, that are more clear, that maybe deceive you, or maybe that give you a riddle, or that are written in a more personal way or written in a more formal way. So people have different expectations. And the question is, what do you do with it? And the real key is to have those different elements align. So you have your theme, maybe you have a second theme in combination, like with my game, where it's like, okay, I have cyberpunk and I have project management. And the question is, of course, people interested in those two topics, what type of people are they? Do they prefer more like real excitement, with luck, with dice, or do they prefer something like more chess-like, strategic? Do they prefer to have a character where they can identify themselves, or do they prefer some management style game, Euro style game? So what type of, or maybe they're more interested in the story, or maybe in the social interaction with other players. Do they prefer more or less, fewer players? And connecting those different elements so that they fit, that is really the key. So you have theme, you have setting, you have game mechanics, you have the game parts like characters or pictures. What type of images do people prefer? Do they want to have a rule heavy or a lightweight game? And maybe if you even write a computer game, maybe also the music, what type of music do these people prefer? So you have to ask yourself a lot of questions, because you don't want to end up with a game where I say, okay, like this part, but where you hit only like a small portion of your audience, because you mixed in different parts that don't fit together. Maybe that fit for you, but not for your target audience. So it's really like a puzzle game where you have to see that different parts fit together, and it's not just about, hero's journey, okay, he's the hero, here's the world, here it continues, and this is the magic element, and then comes the climax, and then the story is over. You really have to emphasize with your audience what type of person are they, what do people want to read, what genres are there, how do these different genres work, how do the game mechanics work, and what type of people are there. So let's briefly look at a few. We will continue this next time. This will take up a little bit. I'm not sure how familiar you are with games like Magic the Gathering. So you have it's a trade game, a trade card game, and you can compile your deck on your own. Before the game, you basically build your deck and you shuffle it, and then you have certain combinations of cards and certain types of winnings. And that is extremely popular, that game. I think it's more than 20 million players worldwide, and with massive amounts of profits they did with the cards. So that was a huge success, and it's, I think, 30 years or so old. They started, I think, in 1993, and they use actually targeting 3 different types of players, and they have a so-called Timmy, they have a Spike, and they have a Johnny. So what are those three types? So the Timmy is usually maybe more a childlike player, someone who wants to win, like with big creatures, with big changes in the game, and really wants to shine in that moment and really put that big fireball or big dinosaur on the table and feel great about it. And then think, okay, with these huge creatures and those, I will just crush my enemy and win this game. So that is Timmy player, and that is of course more tactical gameplay from turn to turn, and they change their game. Compare it with like movies or so. Maybe it's someone who wants to see action, who want big explosion. Doesn't really matter if they solve a mystery or something. They want the big explosion, and that's their appeal, and that's where you want to go. And the question is, of course, do you want to design your game for that player, or do you want to maybe give within your game options for that player to have that feeling? And if you don't have a mechanic in that regard, or if you don't have like a huge action scene in your book or in your movie, the Timmy player or reader or watcher will say, I don't like this. It's boring. So you could lose that player, of course, or that reader. I'll just copy it here, and let's scroll down. So here we have the player types. So that was the Timmy, so big creatures, big impacts. And then there's Spike. And, move it a little bit. Then there's the Spike. And the Spike is really about winning. Doesn't matter how, no mercy, using the rules as it is written and following the rules and bending the rules, just following how it is just written, and they are about winning. And in tournaments or so, they have like real magic card game tournaments. They really, you will find mostly Spike players there. Then you have to think, okay, what type of cards do you do, or what kind of rules do you want to design for them to be able to play a winning strategy? So maybe less luck, or more focused on finding little differences in the rules, etc. So you really have to think about that. And the third one is the Johnny. The Johnny is a little bit a mix. No. The Johnny is a little bit of a mix. The Johnny wants to be an innovator and find new strategies in your game and come up with something new, something surprising, and that really wins the game. And those are less common also in tournaments, or significantly less common, because usually the Spike players just take the successful strategies and use them in tournaments. So they are more about innovation, finding something new. This is, of course, these three types. There are, of course, more of these types, and there are more for the literature genre, and those are, of course, focused on a specific type of card game. And for your own game, or for your own book, for your own movie, you should think about, okay, what type of person do you want to appeal to? Do you want to appeal to everyone? Do you want to give Johnny all the tools and scare away the Timmy player? Or do you want to really have a competitive game and really focus on Spike, and then also think about the business strategy? How do Spike players find other players? Do they just play it online? Do they play it in card games? Do you organize meetings? So there are a lot of questions, but the point is, if you don't ask these questions at the beginning, then you might be writing a game that appeals to no one, none of these three people, and you will you won't do yourself a good service by saying, okay, I just do whatever I like, and I don't care about the people actually playing the game, and that is where you can save a lot of time and money if you ask those questions early and think about how this could relate. The challenge is always the first game, the first book you do, because maybe you had this idea for years and years and years. You really want all those ideas and how they deal with each other and how they go together. Then if you are in that situation, if it's your first game, maybe think about, okay, do it. Put in everything you like in the game, in the book, write about this and backstory and world building, etc. But be careful not to invest a lot of money into it in terms of like marketing or something like that. I mean, after the fact, after you've written, take it as an exercise. Take it as something that you can get feedback from other people. So build your prototype and get feedback. That is, of course, possible, but don't expect like your first game or your first book to be the new bestseller just because you had a shot and here's my game and there are 50 million or 100 million gamers and why don't they buy my game or read my book? Don't think about that. See it as a learning exercise. There's a lot to learn in game design. There's a lot to learn in building exciting stories and getting the reader engaged in your story, in your world. And that is really what I want to take with you. I will post a lot of links later, I think tomorrow or so. If you have any questions, just post them below. If you have ideas for future workshops, post them below. Next time, we will talk more about those player types and also what type of situations in games they really like. Emotional moments, how is the end game, how is the final turn, what do they expect there, what are good emotional moments. So it's similar to writing a good book where you have that climactic ending of the story. So how do you want that? And maybe you have played some games where at the end of the game, okay, the last player does the turn, the cards are running out, and then everyone counts up their victory points or money, and the person with the most money wins, and that's the game. There's no excitement in such an ending. Think about it as a story. Think about your game as a story, and how should the climax of the story be? How should the final round be? And if you know that, and then you can work towards that. And the same goes with novels and really getting there. In a way, it also applies to non-fiction books, but that is something for another time. So next time, character motivation, emotional moments in games, more about game mechanics, answering your questions, and more about also the hero's journey and how to really design, because then we are really again back in writing, design the rule book, because rule book is basically the guide for new players. In that regard, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope you got some ideas. Next Sunday again, I will set up. Sunday, I'm not sure. Either in 1 week or 2 weeks, I will announce it early. There's also a meetup group where you can join and discuss. And I'm looking forward to any questions, any feedback, and maybe you can use some of those ideas for your next book, for your next game. With regard, thank you for watching and see you next week.